So over the past few weeks, we've had the opportunity to receive review on the foundation of Buddhist practice. And something that stuck out to me was that in chapter 2, doubt appeared as a type of awareness, and then in chapter 3 as a root affliction. So doubt's pretty important if it's appeared in 2 chapters already. And I know that for me, when I've seen people discuss their doubt in the past, it's been really helpful. So I wanted that to be my BBC topic for today. So what is doubt? From chapter 3 of the Foundation of Buddhist Practice, from the list of root afflictions, deluded doubt is indecisive wavering that tends towards an incorrect conclusion about important points such as karma and its results, the Four Truths, and the Three Jewels. In my mind, I see doubt maybe start as kind of this mental resistance to something that is really challenging or new for me. And so when I see that come up, I know, okay, this might lead to doubt, and that might lead to wrong views. So I need to do something. I don't want that to be the situation, and what I can do is investigate. Something that I found really wonderful in Buddhism is that we're encouraged to analyze, investigate, not just accept things on faith alone. And oftentimes this is compared to testing gold. Something that I found helpful, in addition to the gold testing analogy, is the Kalama Sutta from the Pali Canon. And this is discussed in Approaching the Buddhist Path. And what that says about the sutta, quote, knowing that the Kalamas are reasonable and sensible people, the Buddha encourages them to investigate the various teachings they hear and not simply accept them because of the flimsy reasons that people too often give for their beliefs. The Buddha does not recommend that the Kalamas discard statements because they do not understand them. Rather, he encourages them to test the assertions and see if those assertions affirm what the Kalamas know is true and beneficial from their own experience. So if I see this resistance, this doubt starting to arise in my mind, I can accept that that's the state of my mind and then say, okay, I need to investigate this. I need to find a new perspective. What is true from my own experience? And one of the things that I've seen is that analogies and metaphors are used very often in Buddhist teachings. And I want to give one example as kind of a starting point, and this is coming from Gyaltsup's commentary on Aryadeva's 400. 2 jackals were sitting under a palasha tree. When a palasha blossom fell, one of them thought that they were all like that. The other thought that the blossom that had fallen was not meat, but the ones still on the tree were meat. This is like thinking what leaves the body is filthy, while what remains in it is clean. Now I picked this because I don't understand what palasha blossoms are, but I can see that for the right person in the right time, this analogy would have helped them understand something about the lack of cleanliness of the body, but okay, maybe that one doesn't work for me. So I need to make some of my own analogies for understanding some of these really important ideas that I have mental resistance to. And they need to make sense to me. I need to see from my own experience. Well, what I think is true, based on my habituated thought, is typically coming from math and physics. So I have 2 analogies for you today coming from math and physics, and I've made a lot of these for myself, and they've really helped release some of this hindrance in my mind, some of this tightness around these new ideas, by seeing that these ideas in Buddhism are just like things that I already believe are true. So first, there's a really important question that I saw come up for me a lot and was even addressed at the beginning of the Chenrezig retreat we just had, which is really, how do these Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and deities, how do they exist? How do we think about them? And there's a passage that summarizes this in the beginning of How to Free Your Mind, Tara the Liberator. Tara can be understood on many different levels. First, she is a historical figure, a person who generated bodhicitta, the altruistic intention to attain full enlightenment in order to benefit all living beings most effectively, and then actualize that intention by becoming a Buddha. Second, she is a manifestation of awakened qualities. And third, she is our Buddha potential in its future, fully purified and evolved form. We may alternate between these understandings, using them as needed to cultivate our good qualities. So in this passage, Tara is being explained in 3 different ways. And at first, this caused me some difficulty. I want one way to relate to Tara. You're giving me a choice of 3 things that do not seem to be the same, so how can this be true? Well, I found an analogy that made perfect sense to me and then made some space in my mind. One might ask the question, how does the electron exist? And say you posed this question to 3 physicists. Now, the first one is maybe an atomic physicist. So that physicist would explain how the electron exists in an atom and interacts with light. The second physicist might be a condensed matter physicist who studies materials like superconductors and semiconductors. To that physicist, it's really a question of how that electron interacts with other electrons throughout this whole material. If the third physicist is a particle physicist, she would completely disagree with both of them because in her mind, the electron is this fundamental standalone particle that interacts with other standalone fundamental particles away from materials. So this makes perfect sense to me. This electron can be described in 3 very different ways based on what context you're looking at it. So similarly, it should be fine for Tara to be described in 3 very different ways depending on the context, on that person and what their needs are. So this helped relieve that doubt for me. The second one is actually a class of resistance that I saw come up. And there's a lot of prayers and passages that talk about infinite Buddhas or countless sentient beings, beginningless time. And I realized that these are maybe different words in Sanskrit and Tibetan and have maybe very specific meanings in different contexts. But in my mind, it was a lot of the same resistance of starting to think that things were just not mathematically possible. So I worked with this a little bit and started to find mathematical analogies that showed me that these things are possible. And there was a really important question that I struggled with for a long time, which was fundamentally, why do I need to become a Buddha? There are already Buddhas, so why do you need another one? And what's interesting is this was something I struggled with, and then one day when watching a video of a teaching, someone posed that question. And the answer, to paraphrase, and I might be misremembering part of it, but was this idea that we each have different karmic connections to other beings. And so while there are multiple Buddhas already, we bring these additional karmic connections to the sentient beings that have not been liberated. But it didn't quite resolve my doubts surrounding the infinite beings and infinite Buddhas, and I still struggled with that for some time. And finally, I came up with the math analogy that resolved it for me. No calculus involved, no equations. So we start by thinking about just the positive integers, like 1, 2, 58, 999. There's an infinite number of them. Now, some of them are prime numbers, numbers that you can only get to by multiplying a number by 1. So 5 is a prime number. So is 7, 11, 13. There's also an infinite number of prime numbers. If you subtract all of the prime numbers from the positive integers, you're left with the non-prime numbers called composite numbers. There's also an infinite number of them. So even seeing these things starts reminding myself that I might think about infinity in 2 limited ways. But then what helped relieve my doubt was thinking about an analogy where I take every sentient being and I give them each a positive integer. This is fine. There's countless integers, countless sentient beings. And now this karmic connection piece I was struggling with, and I said, okay, let me make an analogy by modeling it as multiples. So if I'm number 5, I have a karmic connection such that I could help liberate a being to being number 10 and 15 and 20 and so on. So if being number 3 has already attained Buddhahood, they have been able to liberate beings 6, 9, 12, but not 10 and not 20. So in this way, I see, okay, it is fine to say that there are already infinite beings liberated by infinite Buddhas, and yet there are still infinite beings left that need me to liberate them, and therefore I need to achieve Buddhahood. So I picked specific numbers here, but I'm fairly sure that it can be generalized such that that can still be true. So this might not be a thorough understanding of the karmic connection part, but it helped relax that doubt in my mind and brought me comfort with this really important idea that I need to attain Buddhahood because there are countless sentient beings waiting for me to do so. So I realize that these analogies might make as much sense to you as Palasha blossoms make to me, but I really think that the takeaway that I hope you have from this is that we can make these analogies, we can utilize some of this past knowledge we have in our experience to find some new perspectives so that we can move away from doubt into an open mind, removing the hindrances to our practice.